what do you do to really switch off from work? Well, often we go to the gym or play a musical instrument, but often we bring aspects of our work life into these hobbies that we've got, like being really competitive or being goal-driven or having to be perfect when we learn a new skill. Back in October last year, I spoke to Nick Petrie, who researches burnout, and what he found was that a lot of the activities that people do outside of work don't actually recharge their batteries because they have too many things in common with their day job. So in this quick tip, I wanted to bring you a section of my conversation with Nick, where he lays out the concept of the opposite world. Places we go or identities we take on that help us rejuvenate and find flow. And this episode with Nick was one of my most popular, so if you want to hear it in full, you can find it in episode 188 on our website. But here are my highlights on how we can discover our opposite world and beat burnout in the process.
Sometimes it takes people burning out, I've seen, before they go, you know what, I need to do this. I need to prioritize it. One example that we learned from the interviews, which seems to be very popular with people and seems to be helpful for them, I was interviewing an executive at one of the big technology companies, and he was saying this is a very intense culture. People who survive here for 3 or more years are considered veterans. And I was like, well, that's pretty intense. I said, how long have you been here? And he said, 10 years. I said, well, how did you last 10 years without burning out? He says, well, I didn't. I did burn out. I said, oh, well, so how are you still here? He said, well, I made some changes. And so he told me about a series of changes, but the one that stuck in my mind the most, I said, what was the biggest thing you did? And he looked at me down the Zoom line and he summed me up and he said, dancing. I said, what do you mean dancing? And he said, Argentinian tango, to be precise. I was like, okay, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, what I discovered after I burned out is I have this work ethic and I just couldn't switch off. I'm always on. And I'd go to work, I'd be in my head solving problems, then I'd come home in the evenings and I'd have dinner, but then I'd still be up in my head, logic, solving problems. Then I'd do some emails and I was sort of really still in work mode. Then I burned out. So he said, I realized I needed to do something to be able to just switch off my work identity. And what I discovered, I tried some different things, but I discovered Argentinian tango. And he said, in Argentinian tango, it is the opposite of my work world. He said, in Argentinian tango, you need to be in your heart and you need to be in your body. 2 places I really am during my workday. I'm up in my head and logic. Second, the currency in Argentinian tango is the opposite of my work. He said, no one cares about where you work. No one cares how much money you make. No one cares what your job is. Even if you have a job, the only thing they care about is, can you dance? So he said, the music's going, I'm sweating, I'm moving, I'm with my partner, there's all this community there. And then I get to the end of the night and I'm just sweating and I feel great. And I go home, sleep well. He said, the next day I wake up and I feel really recharged again to go back to my other world. He said, it's like it's my opposite world. I was like, that's really interesting. And so we kept interviewing people and we heard this over and over again. People who had learned to perform really full on at high levels and do it sustainably, they had this opposite world they went to. Interestingly, we heard it from one person I interviewed. I said, what's your opposite world, do you think? And she said, it's going to the gym. I said, okay. She goes, but strangely, when I go to the gym and do the workout and I come home, I collapse on the couch afterwards and I just feel exhausted. I said, that sounds strange. Like, tell me about the gym. And she named the gym it is. And I said, oh, what's that like? And she said, well, you go along, basically you're competing against everyone else in the gym because you can see your metrics, how fast you're going, how fast they're going, how long they've been going, what speed you're doing. You basically compete against them. I was like, how different is that from your work world? And she thought about it. She thought, it's exactly the same. And so I said, what do you think your opposite world might be? And she thought about it for a moment. She said, deep water ocean swimming. When I do that, my mind just goes silent for 40 minutes. There's just the creatures on the floor and the water on my body, and I'm just silent. She goes, that's my opposite world. So one thing we've discovered is rather than logically trying to convince people, you should switch off. Hey, Rachel, you should take more breaks. It is to sort of get them excited about something they want to go do, an activity, an active recovery that they enjoy that it's really different, but they have deprioritized. And when we do this in workshops, we hear from a lot of people, I used to have something, but I stopped doing it because I'm working too much, because I've got kids. And the big takeaway a lot of them get is it's a priority. It's not a selfish thing to go do your opposite world. It's actually a priority for your work, your performance, your health, and for your company.
Is there something about flow there as well? So doing something that gets you into that thing that Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi talked about, being flow.
That seems to be the pattern which happens. When people are in there, they're just completely absorbed by it, and their old work identity, which follows them around all the time. I am a doctor. I am this. I'm a nurse. Just, it's not there. It gets a rest. You get the rest from that identity, and now you're a dancer. Now you're a deep water swimmer. So, but it's got to be something you like doing, and it's got to be the opposite. It can't be like I go to the gym and compete. Well, it feels different because it's physical, but no, your mindset is the same mindset you got at work.
I love that, because I've been thinking so much about identity and how we shift our identity away from what we do, because while it's so highly fused with what we do, then when we say, no, I'm going to take a break, I'm not going to do that, whatever, that starts to sort of rock our world and rock our values. But what you're saying is if you start to have breaks from that identity, it's just going to start to loosen it up a little bit, a bit like loosening a tree or a plant pot or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I mean, you asked about causes earlier. One of them is you become very unidimensional. I am a doctor. I am a researcher. I am a banker. And you've just got this one identity. What we found that really helped people was they started to have multiple identities. Multiple hats I wore. For me, coming back to New Zealand, one of the hats I started wearing was I became a rugby coach of under 11-year-olds rugby. Doesn't really seem like a big deal, but to me it was, because for 90 minutes a weekend and then 2 practices, I was not thinking anything about work. I was just thinking about this coaching thing and rugby and sports, which is something I loved growing up, but I had put on hold because it was a waste of time, because I'm off in America doing this thing. So I just having a portfolio of identities, hats that you wear seems to be very healthy for people.
There's a slight alarm bell going off in my head here, because a lot of the time when people say, well, I've got this really awful, difficult, busy piece at work and I really cannot leave, I'm not going to leave. We'll say, okay, well, what are you in control of? Well, I am in control of what I do outside of work. We'll say, well, what can you give up or whatever, just so that you can chill and rest? But actually, what then happens is you give up everything that you need to replenish, or you give up your other identity stuff. So that is a very interesting consideration, that it might not be about giving that up. It might be about working out what you're doing outside of work. Because actually some people are incapable of sitting still. You say to them, just go sit in a field with a book. They're like, oh, that won't replenish me. But it's much better, going and coaching a team than the whole competitive long event. Or the problem is, I can think that a few doctors might go and coach a team, but then get really competitive with that team. And then that's what we've got to do. So you've got to know yourself quite well, haven't you? And think, what sort of hobby or other world, opposite world. I love that phrase, the opposite world, because I think people don't like the word hobbies because it doesn't sound important enough, does it really? And when I think of hobbies, I think of like making model airplanes. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't sound important enough. But an opposite world where you can get into flow and rejuvenate, where you are not in that competitive identity of the working harder and harder and harder, because sometimes we can do that. Because I know people that sort of set up charities or sort of, run religious organizations or run this or run that. And that's just more hard work, really.
Agreed. You've got to think what is genuinely opposite, I think. And when you think opposite, I think what I've learned is what's the opposite mindset from your work one. So one leader I was speaking to, he said he's quite an extrovert. And so at the conference I was doing the speech at, and he was saying to the big group, he said, I'm an extrovert, so people sort of naturally think my opposite would be to be an introvert, be on my own. And he goes, no, but it's not. My opposite is to be around people, but in a social environment. And so I said, well, how's that opposite? He goes, people don't need anything from me. I don't feel like I'm serving people when I'm in that social environment with friends. So you've got to identify what is the core opposite part that needs to shift. If you're going off to run a charity, if you're going off to do fundraising, is that still being the responsible one who is serving everyone, putting yourself at the service of everyone? That's probably the part you need to do opposite. When I wrote a LinkedIn post on it, and it got the most interactions, comments, likes of any post I've ever done. And the final question I ask is, what's your opposite world? And hundreds of people wrote their opposite worlds below it. So it was a good little research tool. I went through and categorized, like, do they fall into different buckets? And they did. So the 6 buckets that you might consider, in order of popularity really: physical activity, artistic, crafts, music, instruments, painting, that sort of thing. Nature was 3rd. Home tasks, renovations, doing something to your house, that sort of thing. Animals was the 5th one. Doing things with animals, with pets, on the farm. And the 6th one was volunteering. And so that's a sort of good place to start if you're like a lot of people who go, I just don't know. The second thing to do is think about when you were younger, before you got so busy in life, what did you used to love to do, but you've stopped doing because work, family, other commitments became too important?
That's a very interesting question. And again, a lot of us when we were younger used to love competitive sports or, music to a high level because that's what we've done. So I think that's quite difficult to actually pull out which bit that we used to love to do is the achievement-based bit and what is a hobby. But it's doable. And I think actually people just need to go and try it, right? Put yourself into an evening class making pottery and see if you like that, or go sing in a choir, or go play tennis. Just work out which bits build you up and which bits don't, right?
Yeah, you're dead right. It is an exploration. That's what I had to do. I learned about this, so I thought this is really good, and I started teaching it. And then I'd think, Nick, what's your opposite world? And I was like, well, I don't have one because I gave up things because I was focused on work. And so when I came back to New Zealand, I explored. That was the thing, to try something. So I tried mountain biking because I live in a mountain biking town. Sort of was quite good. I sort of liked the people I was with, but it wasn't me. I tried guitar, and then I was like, this is actually really frustrating. And I stumbled across coaching. And then later I'm like, that's so obvious. That's what I did growing up and loved it. Sports was a thing, was sitting right in front of me. So I think it does require experimentation in those different buckets.
Nick, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. Now, you mentioned you blog a lot on LinkedIn, and how can people find you if they want to find out more about your work?
Yeah, that's the best way. Just Nick Petrie on LinkedIn, the insights, the opposite world, all the other things we've found are on there.
Great. Okay. So if you want to find out more, then I really encourage people to have a look at that, and presumably people can contact you through LinkedIn if they want to.
Yes.
Nick, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We'd love to get you back another time because I'm sure there's much, much more we can talk about. So will you come back?
Yes, very happy to, Rachel.
She said putting you on the spot, but brilliant. Thank you so much for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you.